Last night at the UFC 302 post-fight presser, Dana White made some outright ludicrous and delusional remarks, all to delegitimize Islam Makhachev and to promote Jon Jones. And I have my theories on why he made these remarks. We're going to take a look at these remarks in a second. But thank God, I talk so much crap about the MMA media. I'm always saying MMA media is horrible. These reporters don't know what they're doing. A reporter actually pushed back. Actually pushed back on Dana White with facts. Dana White kind of shut it down. But what's this reporter going to do? Argue with him for 20 minutes over who's the pound for pound? I don't think so. But essentially what you have is Dana White in this post-fight presser kind of crapping on Islam Makhachev. I mean, maybe that's a bit extreme. I'm going to show you a clip of where he said something that was, at least somewhat praising of Islam. But the way he was riding Jon Jones at this post-fight presser, I already had probably 10 people ask me, Joe, you have to make a video on this. Joe, you have to make a video on this. So here we are. We're going to break it down in this video. We're going to take a look at many clips. We're also going to take a look at Islam Makhachev's response to what Dana White said, because I went through and watched his post-fight presser as well. But let's jump right into it. And we're going to go a little bit out of order. And if you care to watch this in its entirety, any of the videos I show here, I will link them down in the description. Dana White's post-fight presser as well as Islam Makhachev's post-fight presser. But let's start right away. We're going to hear Dana White kind of, praise. I believe he praises Makhachev here. But he talks about Islam Arman, which, in my opinion, is the fight to make. I figured I would include this. All the clips that I'm going to show you are regarding Islam Makhachev from Dana White. But this isn't the part that it's not bad yet, okay? And we're going a little bit out of order, but we'll get to it in a second. So let's listen to what he has to say about Islam Arman potentially being next. And I think the reporter actually asked, will it be in Russia? Which, what a dumb question. We all know it's not going to be in Russia, but let's listen to this.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fight to make. I mean, that's the fight. That's the fight everybody wants to see. That's the fight that needs to happen.
Sounds like he's talking about Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. That's the fight to make. That's the fight that needs to happen. That's the fight that everyone wants to see. Too bad he's not talking about Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall.
Oh, when we were talking earlier about him moving up, I mean, if I was him, I wouldn't even think about moving up till he had that fight. But I don't know about having that fight in Russia. I don't know where we would do it.
If I was him, I wouldn't even think about moving up until I had that fight. Well, that's awfully funny because you offered him to move up at UFC 300, which is part of my theory of why I believe Dana's kind of crapping on Islam Makhachev a little bit. Not really even a little bit. I thought he went out of his way to actually shit on Islam Makhachev. We'll look at the clip in this video. But the next clip I'm going to show you, this isn't really like super delusional, but Dana kind of low-key shit on the BMF title here, which I thought was hilarious. Because what a weird question by the media member, and I can't remember if I left it fully in here or not. I have timestamps that I'm going off of. But this media member said, after the Islam Makhachev-Dustin Poirier stare down, is there a chance that Islam could ever fight for the baddest motherfucker belt? Like, what? What reality is this guy living in? So because Islam got offended that Dustin called him a motherfucker, he's going to fight for the belt with that in its name based on an acronym? I don't know, but either way, I wanted to play this. Listen to what Dana White had to say.
Who could be the next contender for the BMF title? And after what happened in the face-off, do you think Islam could eventually fight for the BMF?
What world is that guy living in is what I want to know.
We're working on the BMF title right now. Yes, but,
By the way, we're working on the BMF title right now. I believe it will be Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway for the featherweight title and the BMF title. And they'll be like, it's unprecedented. By the way, that's a great fight. I'm not shitting on the fight. It's unprecedented. We're having the BMF and the undisputed title. But listen to what Dana White says here. He kind of craps on the BMF title a little bit.
Islam is, one of the greatest fighters in the world ever in that division and one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters in the world. So I don't think he'd be fighting for the BMF, but...
He's one of the greatest fighters in the division. He's one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world. Why would he be fighting for the BMF? That's just a gimmick belt we made up to promote pay-per-views that we don't have main events for because we have a contract with ESPN to have title fights headlining the events. Dana White admits it right there. Okay, now to the delusional part. He's not even asked, and I believe I did leave the question in this part. He's asked, where does Islam Makhachev stack up in terms of all-time lightweight GOATs? And Dana White launches into a diatribe comparing Islam to Jon Jones and delegitimizing basically everything Islam Makhachev has done. And it's crazy because in the separate clip, the next clip that I'm going to show you, he gets pushback from a media member, which I absolutely love. Shout out to that media member, which we're going to shout out in this video, but we'll get to that in a second.
Joe Rogan on the broadcast called Islam the perfect lightweight, and they're just the size, his style of fighting, just his fight IQ. I'm curious, like, where do you rank him in this pantheon of lightweights that we've seen?
So where do you rank him in the lightweight discussion? Nothing about pound for pound. Joe Rogan called him, the perfect lightweight, which I don't have any problem with Rogan saying that. I know Rogan gets a little hyperbolic, but still, nothing about pound for pound, nothing about comparisons to Jon Jones. And watch this diatribe that Dana White launches into here.
Over the years.
Yeah, I think he's, one of the greatest of all time. I think he's incredible. I don't think he's the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. For anybody to call Islam the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world when Jon Jones is still fucking fighting is nuts and shouldn't be ranking in the pound-for-pound or doing any of the fucking rankings ever.
Yeah, by the way, the rankings for the UFC, it's up by blood and sweat and Honolulu 9.5. Go to the rankings page. I've showed it a million times. How are the rankings determined? You'll get the list of the anonymous media sources that we've never heard of, anonymous names that we've never heard of, ranking fighters, and the rankings are completely delegitimized every single day. You can point out 6 different glaring issues with the rankings. And he launches in this diatribe, for anyone to rank Islam Makhachev above Jon Jones, how could they rank him above pound for pound, blah, blah, blah. They don't deserve to be ranking anything. I mean, this is crazy. I'm going to get my argument about who's pound for pound in a second, but let's listen to some more.
If that's what you really think. Jon Jones has never lost a fight, ever. He's fought all the baddest dudes in the world. And then when you think about what pound for pound rankings really mean, he moved it up to heavyweight and destroyed the best guy in the world. As long as Jon Jones is still fighting, active, and in the rankings.
As long as Jon Jones is still fighting and active. Well, there you go, Dana White. Dead giveaway. As long as he's still fighting and active. Since February of 2020. We'll start at the beginning of February. Okay, we'll be a little bit more lenient. Since the beginning of February 2020, he's had 2 fights. Once in 2020, once in 2023, March of 2023. It is now June of 2024. 4 years, 2 fights. As long as Jon Jones is still fighting and active, well, there you go. You just excluded him from the discussion, Dana. You found it. You got to that spot. You got to the right place all on your own, Dana. As long as... he came up... You want to talk about pound for pound? He came up and beat the #1 guy in the world. Cyril Gane? Oh, Cyril Gane beat Tai Tuivasa, who almost got starched by Greg Hardy, who just got choked out by Marcin Tybura. I'm not trying to play revisionist history, but Cyril Gane had just lost to Francis Ngannou. And I'm not some Jon Jones hater. I get called a Jon Jones fanboy all the time because I think Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. But to act like his activity over the last 4 years and his resume over the last 10 or 12 years or however long it is, 15 years, grandfathers him a pound for pound #1 spot right now is completely delusional and ridiculous. But let's continue listening.
Yeah, nobody's pound for pound best fighter in the world.
Well, to kind of go off of that, Islam said he wanted that second belt. He wanted to go to welterweight. Is that something that, I know you have that welterweight title fight coming up. Is that something maybe you'll discuss with him, or do you want him to stick at lightweight?
I don't know. I mean, he hasn't said anything like that to us, so we'll see.
So kind of shoots, I don't want to say shoots down the welterweight opportunity, but kind of shoots it down a little bit. Let me break down to you why I believe Dana White acted this way. I believe there's 2 reasons. I think Dana White is somewhat pissed that Islam Makhachev turned down the main event for UFC 300, where he was offered the Leon Edwards fight. Leon Edwards accepted. Islam Makhachev said, no, I'd have to have my training camp during Ramadan and whatnot. I don't want to fight during Ramadan. And I think Dana White's a little bit pissed about that, okay? And I think he's kind of taking it out on Islam. But the other thing is, Dana White, as much as he puts on this tough guy act and, I don't care what anyone on the internet says about me, and Power Slap's a smashing success and it's a juggernaut, and you take every sport in the world and times it by 10, it still doesn't compete with Power Slap, all these ridiculous remarks. He really is kind of in tune with criticism. That's why he puts out these hit pieces, which aren't even actually, if you actually put context on them, they don't even make sense. But he's like, yeah, all these media members and YouTubers were crapping UFC 300, which I actually agree with Dana White in this point. But the point I'm trying to make here, he's very in tune with the online kind of fan base who he interacts with kind of on a regular basis. And I think he's starting to feel the heat about Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic. Nobody wants to see Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic, okay? Stipe hasn't fought since I've had a channel. And the last time he did fight, he got brutally folded like a lawn chair by Francis Ngannou. And now we're going back to March of 2020, a brutal KO loss to earn Stipe a title shot in late 2024. Imagine getting a title shot creeping up on 5 years. But anyway, the point I'm getting to here is Dana White wants to make Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. He believes that's the biggest money fight. And there's some other reasons that I'm not going to get into because I'm going to make a whole nother video on that. But he feels the heat. He feels the heat. He feels the pressure. He feels the fan sentiment trying to really push, because now they have an interim champion in Tom Aspinall, push against that fight and try to delegitimize Jon Jones a bit. And Dana White, what Dana White sees is he doesn't care about Jon Jones himself. He sees dollars flying out the window. He sees, oh no, if I can't promote this fight as well as I thought I could, pound for pound number one versus pound for pound best heavyweight, or not pound for pound best heavyweight, but greatest heavyweight of all time versus greatest light heavyweight of all time, and pound for pound number one. He sees like the media and the fans going against him. So that is the reason I believe he's acting like this. Luckily, we had a media member push back. It was Mike Bond of MMA Junkie push back on Dana White for his ludicrous pound for pound statements. Let's take a look.
Just to go back to Islam, he's now on a 14-fight winning streak, which is the third longest in history behind Anderson Silva and Usman. What would it take for him to surpass Jon Jones in your mind for that pound for pound number one?
I mean, when you think about what pound for pound really means, right? He fought Volkanovski, who's a weight class lower than him. Jon Jones beat everybody at light heavyweight, then beat the best heavyweight in the division like it was nothing.
That's his only fight in damn near 4 years.
At a higher weight class.
So, I mean,
Jon Jones is absolutely positively the pound for pound best fighter in the world. Probably the greatest fighter of all time in any sport. When you talk about who's the baddest dude in the world, you put two guys in a room and who walks out, Jon Jones walks out of the fucking room every time.
Imagine going to the post-fight presser for 302, and Dana White's the one that started bringing this up. Like, oh, let me put down Islam Makhachev, who just had a stellar performance, one of the best performances, on the best performance on the card. And you know what? Let me put him down and elevate Jon Jones, because people are starting to complain about Jon Jones and my matchmaking. But luckily, Mike Bond pushes back.
No question about it.
yeah. And in no way trying to diminish Jon's accomplishments, but he's fought once in the last however many years. Islam's fighting multiple times a year, defending. So at what point does activity outweigh Jon's?
Beautiful. I like that you asked that question.
By the way, guys, Dana White, he's flustered here. Perfect pushback, perfect question, super respectful. Look, what about activity? Jon Jones fought once in the last 4 years, twice in the last 4 years, really. And Islam's been super active. We're going to go through the actual statistics here in a second. What do you have to say about that, Dana? How can he be pound for pound? At what point does not fighting lose you that pound for pound spot? Basically, Dana White's entire argument to Jon Jones being the pound for pound king is the Uncle Rico argument. Coach would have put me in fourth quarter, we would have took states. How much you want to bet I could throw a pigskin over those mountains? I believe Jon Jones is one of the greatest of all time. I'm not a Jon Jones hater. But at some point, you can't grandfather him a pound-for-pound number one spot based off of what he did in 2011, based off of what he did in 2015, whatever, name whatever year you want. The last 10 years before 2020. You can't grandfather him a pound-for-pound number one spot because of that. Let's listen to what Dana says.
Let's talk about activity. 3 years off. Nobody, not even Ali. Nobody's ever come from 3 years off and looked the same. Jon Jones walked through the number one guy in the heavyweight division like it was nothing with 3 years off.
Walked through Cyril Gane, who just lost to Francis Ngannou, had a win over Tai Tuivasa, and relatively inexperienced in MMA overall. But okay.
Yeah, Jon Jones is the best ever. Ever. And when I say ever, I mean in any combat sport. He's the best ever. You throw Jon Jones in a room with anybody, Jon Jones walks out of the room.
John's saying he's fighting Stipe November 9th in New York. Is that fine?
I love it.
Yeah, nothing.
So there you go. We might get Jon Jones, Stipe in November. The Jon Jones deep throating here by Dana White was something to behold. And I want to go through the actual claims here, okay? And I want to go through the actual numbers to really put it in perspective who belongs as pound for pound number one, because I believe Islam Makhachev is pound for pound number one. Islam Makhachev right here, okay? Since February of 2020, we'll just do since February 2020. Islam's obviously on a crazy long win streak, but since February of 2020, Makhachev is 8-0 with 7 finishes, okay? Well, who did he beat? Who did he beat? Let's look at this resume, okay? Since February of 2020, he beat Drew Dober. Okay, doesn't really mean much. Thiago Moises. Okay, doesn't really mean that much. Dan Hooker. Okay, means a little bit. Bobby Green. But then let's get into the real wins, the last 4 wins. Charles Oliveira, Alexander Volkanovski, and Dustin Poirier. And again, 7 out of those 8 wins were finishes, and the last 4 fights against the steepest competition of his career were all finishes, okay? Let's look at Jon Jones. Jon Jones, since February of 2020, February 8th, 2020, Dominic Reyes. A fight that he arguably lost, okay? And that hasn't aged rather well. Dominic Reyes is a dead body. Maybe that's the Jon Jones curse. And then he submitted Cyril Gane at UFC 285 in March of 2023. So basically, we're considering Jon Jones pound for pound number one solely off this win over Cyril Gane because he moved up to heavyweight and submitted Cyril Gane. That's basically it. Okay. Now I want to go take this a step further. Okay. So 2-0, 8-0 since 2020, more finishes, but let's look at quality of opponents. Let's look back at the UFC rankings. Okay. So this is the current UFC rankings. We don't really need to look at this, but let's go back to the UFC rankings October of 2023 when Islam Makhachev brutally chinned Volkanovski. I know it was on short notice. Let's look at the pound-for-pound rankings right here. Volkanovski's ranked number 2. Volkanovski's ranked number 2 in the pound-for-pound official rankings, if that's what you want to go off of. Okay, let's look at February of 2023 when Islam Makhachev defeated Alexander Volkanovski via decision. Where was Volkanovski at? Oh, Volkanovski was number 1. Remember Dana White promoting this? Oh, this is for the number 1 pound-for-pound spot. Volkanovski was sitting at number 1. Oh, let's look at the Charles Oliveira win where he submitted Charles Oliveira. Where was Charles Oliveira ranked in October of 2022? Oh, he's ranked number 3 in the pound for pound. So you have Islam Makhachev who defeated pound for pound number 2, pound for pound number 1, and pound for pound number 3 in his last 3 fights before Dustin Poirier. Now, Dustin Poirier wasn't ranked in the pound for pound rankings when he defeated him last night, but Dustin Poirier is still a very quality opponent, and that builds on the resume itself. Now, let's take a look at Jon Jones, okay? Let's go back to March of 2023. Let's take a look at the pound-for-pound list right here. You have the pound-for-pound. You have Jon Jones sitting here at number 10 because he's been inactive. I don't see any Cyril Gane on that list. Let me make sure the whole list is on the screen. I don't see any Cyril Gane on that list, do you? No. Let's go back to February of 2020. Now, this screen's a little bit dark. I don't know why it loaded so weird. I guess just because it's an old web page. I used the Wayback Machine to get this. Does anybody see Dominic Reyes here in the pound-for-pound rankings? I certainly don't. Let me scroll down a little bit so you make sure you can see it. Jorge Masvidal, number 15 pound-for-pound. Jeez. That's crazy to even see. But, again, I mean, open and shut case. Islam defeating pound-for-pound fighter after pound-for-pound fighter, dominantly defeating most of them, and Jon Jones sitting on the sidelines. We got to stop this Uncle Rico stuff in MMA. Gifting guys some type of accolades just because of what they've done in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. You know, it matters in the GOAT discussion. If he was talking about the GOAT discussion, fine. But he went out of his way to bring up the pound-for-pound discussion, and it didn't even matter. Nobody asked him about that. But he just wanted to shit on Islam and promote Jon Jones. And some of the fans are going to be, their heads are going to be spinning because they don't like Islam, they don't like Jon Jones, so their heads are going to be spinning with this argument. But I want to say, shout out to Mike Bond. This is Mike Bond right here. I just pulled this up. We're not actually going to look at this interview. Shout out to this guy right here for at least pushing back some semblance of pushback against Dana White. I wish he would have said, you know what? Jon Jones defeated 0 pound-for-pound guys in the last 4 years. Islam Makhachev defeated number 2, number 1, and number 3 in his last 3 fights before Dustin Poirier. What do you make of that argument? I would have loved that. But I understand he's not going to sit there and have a full-blown argument with Dana White. Now, the last thing I want to look at is Islam Makhachev post-UFC 302. This first clip is him reacting to Dana White's comments. Somebody asked him, what do you make of Dana White saying you're not pound for pound #1? And let's listen.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. Maybe it's his opinion. But I think I saved this card today because all these fights boring and the whole arena almost sleep. And we show with Dustin great performance. Then give me 2 bonuses.
So there you go. He just basically says he kind of doesn't care. He saved the card because the card was boring, which was facts. I love how Islam Makhachev is so brutally honest. I don't know how people hate Islam Makhachev, to be honest. Dude has the funniest, truthful trash talk because all he does is speak facts. And he just says, I saved the card tonight. I had a great performance against Dustin Poirier. Basically, I don't care. Now, the next clip I want to show you, and I just watched through his entire post-fight presser, and I actually thought this was pretty funny, so I wanted to play it. Again, this just kind of showcases Islam Makhachev's kind of funny trash talk. Listen to what he says about Dustin Poirier here.
And I told him in the press conference, if you not tap, you will sleep. But I think he stopped and sleep.
He's saying at the press conference, remember, he said, if you don't tap, you'll go to sleep. And he said, I think he taps and he went to sleep, which was actually pretty funny. Now, the next clip I want to show you is regarding him wanting to go up for a second belt. By the way, Joe Rogan was goading him into calling out the welterweight champion in the post-fight interview. But I think it's going to get misconstrued what Islam Makhachev said here, so I wanted to include this in the video. What he says about Arman not making sense and the double champ dreams. Listen to this.
What do you make of Arman as an opponent, and I guess how much does that rematch interest you?
I'm ready, man. Then have my number, just call me and put some new challenge.
So there you go. I'm ready. Just call me. That was it. But this next part, I think people are going to use this as a headline. People are going to say, Islam's ducking Arman. Listen to what was asked and listen to Islam's response.
Have you been impressed with him since you guys first fought?
It's not make sense when you have rematch. I need some new challenge. But if
it does make sense. Arman's gotten significantly better since they first fought, and they fought on short notice, so I disagree. But listen to what he says next.
then I want, let's do it. No problem.
Thanks.
If Dana wants, let's do it. No problem. So there you go. Ridiculous comments by Dana White. Look at this shit-eating grin. I don't see, where's the power slap cup at? But completely ridiculous. I believe that Islam Makhachev, based on activity and based on level of opposition, should be pound for pound #1. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I don't really care that much about the pound for pound rankings. The whole point of this video is, why is Dana White going to the 302 presser when your champion and main eventer just put on a phenomenal performance and going out of your way to demote him, to delegitimize him, to throw cold water on him? What kind of promotion is this? It makes absolutely no sense. And I think it all comes down to, he's mad that Islam Makhachev turned down that UFC 300 opportunity. And also, he feels the heat coming back regarding Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. So we must keep it up. We must keep it up. Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic should not happen, especially not in 2024. So let me know what you guys think. I think Islam Makhachev's pound for pound #1. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.